time for our panel to preview Alphabet and Intel, two names that are reporting today after the bell. Angelo Zino, Senior Equity Analyst at CFRA Research, and Christine Short, Head of Corporate Events Research at Wall Street Horizon. Thank you so much for being with us at TMX Company. Good to see you both. Thank you for being here. Tell me a little bit, Angelo, about Alphabet, the earnings, your expectations. Generally, it has beaten in the past. There have been a lot of positive comments. Are the expectations I was reading maybe too aggressive?
So, thanks for having me. And, as far as the March quarter is concerned, I don't think they're too aggressive. Looking at revenue growth for about 11%, earnings of a little over $2 or so. The company doesn't typically give guidance, more on the qualitative side of things. So it's almost kind of a black box when these companies, when Alphabet does report. But as far as the key numbers to look out for, I would say it's Google Cloud. We're looking for growth of about 28% or somewhere in the high 20s range. We think is going to be good enough. On the YouTube side of things, you're going to want to see high single-digit to low double-digit growth. And then, I'd say on the search side of things, that's really maybe where the unknown is, what the digital ad landscape looks like right now. And more importantly is going to be what type of qualitative guidance that they give on the ad side of things. We know that there's a pullback coming from the retail Chinese names out there with the Sheins and Temus. That's going to have a negative impact there. So we kind of want to see what enterprise spending looks like, how that's going to impact the advertising side of things. But as far as cloud and YouTube is concerned, we expect the numbers to be relatively strong for Q1.
And you said a lot of the same, Christine. You're focusing a lot on the AI part of this.
Absolutely. And the story, of course, is going to be different for Alphabet versus Intel. Alphabet, of course, being on the forefront and announcing CapEx of $75 billion last quarter, most of that to support their servers and data centers that funnel into AI in the Google Cloud. Intel, on the other hand, a little bit missed the AI boom, and we're going to hear from Lip-Bu Tan, the new CEO, about that turnaround plan. But I agree with Angelo and on some of the comments that you yourself, Nicole, and your prior guest, Jeff, made around looking at how tariffs are impacting these names. That's the main thing I'm going to be looking at in all of these reports, and I have been up until this point, is how, for Alphabet, for example, is directly and indirectly impacted by these tariffs. So ad revenue, like Angelo mentioned, certainly, not directly impacted by tariffs, but companies, if there's an economic slowdown, they'll slow down their spending. And these large Chinese advertisers like Temu and Shein, if they pull back, what does that do to Google's ad revenues? And then on the AI spending and Google Cloud side, they're building up this infrastructure, their servers, their data centers. A lot of that hardware is coming from outside of the country, will be subjected to tariffs. Likely at some point. There is an exemption right now, but no one knows for how long or what the scope of tariffs might look like. So these data centers could get a lot more expensive to build. And then indirectly, again, if there is a slowdown, what does that do to their customer base? Do customers hold off on migrating to the cloud? Do they stop using Google's AI tools? So certainly looking at both the direct and indirect impact of tariffs and just how Google provides their outlook going forward based on the information they have now about trade policy.
And look, if we do have some sort of economic slowdown, Angelo, I mean, what does it mean for Google and Intel? I mean, I was reading in your notes, Christine, how you said an economic slowdown might force businesses to pause their migration to the cloud, for example. And you want more of these businesses to keep spending, to keep growing. Tell me your thoughts, Angelo, on what we could see if we have a little bit of a slowdown. What does that mean for Intel and Alphabet?
Yeah, so as far as Alphabet is concerned, typically the last area you cut on the advertising side of things, or historically the way it's worked, is you'll cut, from some of the smaller vendors out there and the non-kind of digital ad names. So, names like a Snap and Pinterest will usually kind of feel the heat a little bit more initially. Even a Meta, Alphabet's usually the last area to get hit because that search business typically gathers so many eyes out there. You don't want to, take ad dollars away from Alphabet. These might be different times now, right? In terms of, kind of AI ramping up here, the concerns about kind of what's going on in terms of the longevity of search and what's going, whether or not, it is just as good as it was in the past. So we'll kind of see, exactly what that means for Alphabet, but I would expect them to be a little bit more resilient here in the near term, despite some of the concerns on the tariff side of things. Also, clearly not a direct impact. It's more of a direct impact. It's all going to be what enterprise spend looks like. On Intel side of things, clearly it's going to be, more uncertainty. Intel has about 29% of their sales tied to China. And, there's going to be kind of a number of effects here. You would think on Intel side of things for their foundry exposure, it would be a positive. If you're throwing tariffs all across the board for any type of semiconductor imports here in the U.S., sometime later this year, the hope would be that Intel would get some business on the foundry side of things. We're going to listen to hear if they get any type of new business here in Q1 or even in Q2. On the negative side of things, the product revenue probably takes somewhat a hit, especially given that high exposure into China.
All right, and just what are your price targets? So we're out of time. Google is at 159, Intel's at 21. What are your price targets, Angelo?
For Alphabet, it is 190, and for Intel, I believe it's 25.
Great to see you both. Thank you. Angelo Zino, Christine Short. Thank you.